Welcome to How Do We Rise, Step 3. In How Do We Rise, Step 1, we talked about recognizing that we are in a spiritual battle. We humans, the true humans, are in a spiritual battle with this parasitic, predatory adversary that is after our enslavement, our permanent, perpetual enslavement. And I talked about how we take a look at what the spiritual battle is, how the battle is for our souls, how they don't have souls, and actually what we can do about it. I do offer the problem along with the solution. So if you're interested in hearing that podcast, please go to How Do We Rise, Step 1. In How Do We Rise, Step 2, I talk about that we need to go in and do the inner work to heal ourselves. That if we want to change the world, we have to change ourselves within. We have to do the shadow work, and whatever it takes to do that, whatever it takes to heal ourselves up, we have to make that choice. We really need to make that choice at this point. I wouldn't say it would be nice to, or I invite you to, like I normally do. In order to change the world, we have to change ourselves. That's it. Can't make change in the outer unless you're willing to change the inner, because the outer exists because of what's going on inside of you and inside of each of us. Now, and How Do We Rise, Step 3, I want to go in and talk about how to stop playing the victim and the victimizer role. And that goes along with Step 2, doing that inner shadow work. But this is really fundamental and paramount to go into this just individually, just looking at this, one thing in terms of the overall umbrella of shadow work. The dynamic of the world is set up on upon duality, that yin and yang, or on polarity, the pole of the north, the pole of the south. It's set up on two ports of call, in essence, right? Right and wrong, good and bad, light and dark, victim and victimizer. This is a world that is structured around duality, and it doesn't lend for things that move beyond polarity or beyond the two choices, beyond the opposite forces, if you will. And so, in a world structured around duality, that occurred when the predatory parasitic mind came into this dimension, and this planetary realm, and brought upon itself the idea that it was higher, therefore it made humans lower, or that it was a ruler, which then made humans a peasant. By structuring duality and by bringing forth this idea of how things operate within polarity, and the fact that the predatory mind is a dominant, controlling, invasive, victimizing, sadistic entity and energy, it places humanity inside this very submissive, cowering, apathetic victim mode. So in order to change any paradigm, one must step out of the paradigm itself. We must, and every time we're trying to shift something around, we actually need to release the habit of whatever that is. So in this regard, victim and victimizer, you release the habit of actually being the victim, since we are the true humans. Okay, so we release being the victim to others, and that would mean the entire system and the reaction to all of the places inside, those wounded places, those automatic patterns, or those habits, or those belief systems that are actually holding us locked into feeling, believing, knowing, and owning that we are a victim. Because when we own that we're a victim, what happens is we go right into that submissive mode. We get real apathetic. We get real contracted. We give up. We lose our will. And that allows the victimizer to continue its predatory behavior and attack upon us. So it's really about letting go and moving away from and releasing all habits to the victim role that we as true humans are all playing by submitting to the system itself. When we submit to the system, we literally are creating an energetic contract that states we are the victim and we will live within your system and go along consensually with your agendas. And those victimizers just continue to roll in with all their plans and all of their attention to whatever it is that they're wanting to consume, which is everything. They want to consume us. They want to consume the earth, the resources of the earth, nature, this realm. And so one of the ways to rise, I'm always talking about rising. So one of the ways to rise, literally, is to rise above the victim mode and step out of it, to never play inside of that role again. Now, in a world of duality or polarity, then one would say, well, then I must be the victimizer. But you're stepping out of the entire paradigm, not just one side of it. You can't step out if you're holding on to one side or the other, let alone both. So it's also about stepping out of being a victimizer, because oftentimes what happens is victims will become victimizers to those that they feel are weaker than them. So it's about leaving the system. It's about absolutely stepping outside of the system, letting go of the entire paradigm, the paradigm being victim or victimizer, and move to a place of partnership. Now, the reality is that we're to really live quite fluidly with reasonability, being quite rational and thinking through things out with critical thinking, understanding, having a greater understanding of ourselves and others, but moving into and living by way of partnership and cooperation, heavy doses of respect for first self-respect and then respect for others, dignity for self and dignity for others, and equity for all others, including yourself. That's how we move out of the victimizer game. And we also have to release the polarity. We have to exchange polarity for harmony and equilibrium. We have to exchange looking at life through dual understanding, yin and yang, in order to bring in all the colors and all the hues and all the tones and all the variables that exist beyond the yin and the yang, or the opposites. So we just have to be good stewards of balance and calming joy. We have to not judge ourselves and others, and we just need acceptance, because acceptance heals incredible amounts of sorrow and anger and disconnection. So while we're living in this consciousness of polarity and duality, we seem to look at that either or that or, and we just don't see anything in between. You see that black or the white, but we don't see all the shades of gray and colors and hues and tones, as I just said. We're not feeling all the nuances of our lives. We're just living it, well, I'm right, so you have to be wrong, or that person's black, so I have to be white. You know, that's how we're looking at things. That's how we're always deciding. We're deciding through judgment and opinion, as opposed to looking at the vast, higher vision, the broader spectrum, to see all of life, all of the unseen and seen operating, and undulating in the field and frequency of consciousness. We don't ever seem to see that We're looking at a box of crayons and we see the black, we see the white, but we don't see those 48 colors in the mix. We just laser in on the black or the white and we blur all other options. We need to stop blurring those options. And when we are unwilling to take responsibility for ourselves, responsibility for our thoughts, for our feelings, and for our actions, then we begin to attach ourselves to being in the role of a victim or operating out of the role of a victimizer in situations that really need to have neither one of them. When we're able to learn how to communicate wisely and clearly and lovingly with each other, then what we can do is we can move into partnership and move into cooperative spirit so that we never have to fall into ever being a victim or being a victimizer, particularly to the relationships that are so close to us. In my appreciation of life, my understanding is that the truth is, and the New Age people will say this is not true, but they don't know what they're talking about, because the truth is there really are victims and there are really victimizers. Why the New Agers have been taught? Because the predators don't want us to see this reality that's going on, that's shaping all of our lives. So they put into these spiritual movements that there are no victims or victimizers. It's all perspective. Well, okay, on one level, things are perspective, but as I say, when you beat a child, you have just victimized them. When you're yelling at your spouse, you have victimized them. When a person rapes another, they have victimized, the rapist has victimized the innocent person. There are victims, and there are victimizers or perpetrators. So when it comes to energy, you either have resonant energy, which is victimizer resonates with victimizers, victims resonate with victims, but also this oppositional energy also has a resonant frequency. Like, in order to be a victimizer, you have to have a victim, and in order to be a victim, you have to have a victimizer. There's this oppositional energy, the yin and yang, that is also very resonant to one another, because one cannot exist without the other. And again, in the New Age understanding that everything is about attracting to learn lessons, to fulfill karmic debts, to absolve people of their responsibility for their behaviors. And I got to tell you, it's all pretty much a bunch of hogwash. Right? The reality is that we didn't come to this world to go to school and just learn lessons. We came to this world to have lives. We came to have experiences. We came to evolve and expand and, yes, learn things and to grow things and to become. We came to upgrade ourselves, and we came to have pleasure. We came to see and know and touch and feel and love the idea and love the experience of being in physical matter, because you get to do a lot of different things in physical matter than you could ever do when you're just disembodied in spiritual matter or in spiritual essence, right? We didn't come here just to learn lessons. Did we come here to learn and grow? Of course we did. We're always learning and growing, whether we're in physical matter or we're in spiritual essence. It's always about evolution and expansion. But this isn't our schoolhouse. Okay? That's again another deception. This is a prison. And it's been a prison for centuries. And we've come here to actually reclaim our bravery and our courage. We've come here to heal ourselves if things happen, and heal that, and rise up and stand up and say no more. Enough is enough. We reclaim this realm. We are not living in victimizer. What we are going to live in is we're going to live in community. We're going to live in unity. We're going to come together in unity, and we're going to stand together. We're going to operate out of love. We're going to be in cooperation. We're going to be in partnership with each other. We're going to build together. We're going to create a beautiful realm together, allowing the freedom of all of nature to coexist with us in harmony. We're going to gather all the seeds that they've stolen from us. We're going to grow and plant. We're not going to have to eat animals anymore because we're going to have all the food source that we originally had. We're going to be healthy. We're going to thrive. And we're going to build a trajectory that is based and centered around love and around potentiality, around abundance, around prosperity, around peace, around joy, and enjoying foods and enjoying our bodies and enjoying sex and enjoying relationships, enjoying having children and enjoying the abundance and sharing with the mother. And as I said, having a coexisting life with all of nature, flora and fauna, and having these vibrant experiences. You can't have that in the paradigm of the victim or the victimizer. You can't have that kind of paradigm if you're always looking at everything in just polar opposites, as opposed to all these variables that play in the energetic field and frequency. The divine source, the prime creator, never created anything based on one or the other, either or. The prime creator created everything based on endless possibilities, endless options, endless insight, endless potentiality. We are getting stuck in polarity. And when we get stuck in polarity, we become a prisoner of our minds because we're a prison of polarity. And the polarity exists in our thinking. And the system itself creates this polarity. So we must step out of the control matrix system that hugs tight to the duality and the polarity of all equations. Quite literally, it's continuously a 1 + 1 = 2. We've not gone beyond that. We have not gotten to 2 + 2 = 4, or 6 + 8 = 14, or 20 + 50 = 70. We've just not moved into those higher equations because we're stuck in the elementary 1 + 1 = 2, and the system sets it that way. It's secured inside a duality. And interestingly, New Age spirituality, along with Taoism, along with Buddhism, along with these isms that are allegedly freeing and liberating the mind towards enlightenment, all hug tight to this false reality matrix. We are not here to ignore people who are in the victim mode. And we're not here to harm people that are victimizers. You see, this world is built on narcissists and sociopaths and psychopaths. And there is this global mass frequency and energy and beings that are victimizers that are literally being unleashed upon us all. The Archon frequency is all about being and creating victimizers, creating narcissists and psychopaths that are running this world. And it's hitting the true humans by creating addiction. There's a reason why addiction is not just about money. People think it's just about money. It's not just about money. Creating addiction. So whether it's cigarettes or it's alcohol or it's drugs or it's food or it's sex or it's gambling, but these imbalances, creating mental health issues, creates an imbalance, creating illness where it plagues people, also with depression, that sort of thing. What it is, it's allowing the soul, it's allowing the being, the body, mind, and emotions to lose balance and equilibrium. And the soul is already set aside. It's already been pushed aside. We don't honor or pay attention to the soul. And when we lose balance in our three dimensions, body, mind, and emotion, when we immerse ourselves into addictive experience, that could even include the TV. It could include an over abuse of unhealthy music, and so on and so forth. Believe it or not, that's really, really very real. It allows the archon energy to slip into the person that is not in balance. Why do you think, besides all the money and all the greed and all the wealth and all the loosh, why do you think they create wars? And they're creating chemical poisoning? And why are they pushing their pharmaceuticals? And why are they creating unhealthy therapeutics? And placing all of these drugs on the street? It's not. The cartel has nothing on the CIA. The cartel has nothing on the government. They're all working together. And it is to create an environment within the being that allows the archonic frequency to slip into the person, take over. They walk in. They literally walk in, and they take over and consume the true human until the true human finally does not exist anymore. And when that happens, that person that once was human now becomes a narcissistic, sociopathic, or psychopathic, or all of it, being that operates with harsh element within the world. They become the murderers, they become the pedophiles, they become the beings that steal in the night and are monstrous abusers, hurting their families, hurting society, and crushing what's going on in terms of the system. They're aiding and abetting in the system to be the monstrous frequency, the satanic frequency, if you will, or the Luciferian frequency. They no longer are operating out of the prime creator. They're operating out of archon frequency, and archon frequency is what they call satanic frequency or Luciferian frequency. Okay? And therefore, once they move into, first of all, they're victimized by the addiction or the mental health issue or the illness. But once they flip and they become the victimizer, then they seek the impasse. They seek the sensitive ones. They seek the ones that are really trying to live very good and healthy lives. And they come in and they victimize. They victimize and create victims. No, they're just abusers. And there's just not only that, there is so much more waiting for us to become inside this dual matrix that's trying to own us fully. And how they can look at what they do. They place in front of us the checkerboard constantly because they're always playing chess, so they're showing that. They use the black and the white, that's the duality, that's the opposition, that's the polarity. They use it in creating, they literally use duality to create MK Ultra victims on all sorts of levels. They are trying to get us to live inside a two-dimensional system, which is just look at it, with black or with white. So once we decide that we're not going to do that anymore, that we are really going to look at all the colors and frequencies, we're going to look at all the beauty and the warts and the mediocrities that creates human life in this prison fishbowl at this time, then we begin to liberate ourselves. So what I'm saying is, what's very important to understand is this, that in spite of the psychopaths running the world at this moment, we must consistently, without waver, own that we are not victims. And instead of going, I'm not a victim, I'm not a victim, I'm not a victim, we own the fact that we are partners, that we're coming together in community, in a unified effort with all of our global relations, human and otherwise, to create a cooperative network system based on love and the higher frequencies. We must realize in our higher minds that actually, and I know you're going to be going, what are you talking about? But we must realize in our higher minds that they are not our victimizers. And again, take away that label so that we can remove the paradigm. Because whether we like it or not, when we think, act, and feel from these 2 points of perspectives, we are creating a psychological adhesive to the slave-master paradigm. And this we must stop immediately. What we focus on, we create. What we focus on, we create. So if we think and feel we are slaves, then we become and hold to that. If we think and feel that they are our masters, or they are our rulers, or they are the elitists, or they are our leaders and we can't live without them, they're our authority figures, then we become the slave to that master, and we hold to that. They want to hold their position. That's part of the chess game. They want to know that they are the king and the queen and the castles and the knights. And they want to know that we are the pawns. And we need to say, first of all, we're not pawns in anybody's game. And you are not the kings, the queens, the knights, and the castles, and you don't have mastery over us. And then you go to the next step. The next step further is, there are no kings and queens and knights and castles, and there are no pawns. And in fact, there's no black and white checkerboard or chessboard to be played with, because there is no duality, because there is no polarity, because I'm stepping out of that paradigm and I'm seeing that there's so much more. So if we think and feel that we are slaves, then we become and we hold to that. But if we think that we are free and sovereign, neither a victim or a victimizer, we become the freedom that is our inherent truth. Because the paradigm, when we step out of it and we no longer play in it, it no longer exists. And first of all, when we step out of it, if I, Raven, step out of it and no longer play in it, then I have stepped out of it and it no longer exists for me. But I am one domino. And so if my partner, my friend Tracy, says, I'm not playing in the victimizer, I step out of that paradigm, then that's the next domino. And then the next person, and the next, until hopefully many dominoes begin to take their rightful position in dropping out of the paradigm. And so the energy, the ripple effect, the consciousness automatically begins to shift when one person steps out, and then the next, and the next, and the next. Do you understand? We may be harmed by what we do with that harm if it's our game that we're putting into play. You see what I'm saying? You are harmed by being in the play, playing in the game of harm. So do we want to play it as a victim? Or do we want to play it as an abuser? Do we want to continue being a slave? Or do we want to continue to support the master? Or do we choose to rise above the charade and become neither, because our minds and our hearts and our very souls are recognized as free? Again, it's always in our minds. What we think becomes. And when we think it for so long, we begin to feel it, and it becomes even more intensified. So the question is, would you like to take my hand and think with me and know with me that we are free and that we live in partnership and cooperative effort? Would you like to take my hand and know with me that we live each day free of this duality? To know that our minds are so clear thinking that we never ponder the idea of the victim anymore, We never ponder the idea of an abuser anymore. That we are just choosing to upgrade into loving consciousness, enveloping wisdom and responsibility for ourselves as our ways of being. Are you willing to do that with me? Are you willing to take my hand? Are you willing to link your beautiful, loving heart that stepped away from this paradigm with me? Because this is the way through the lunacy. They want us to buy into it permanently. But we don't have to do that. We only choose to do that because we believe in our minds that it's true. And by believing in our minds, we make it true. And so all we have to do is believe in our minds that we are free and that we are beyond anything having to do with duality. So interesting. I asked people what their favorite symbols are, and many people choose the yin and the yang. They love the difference, the opposites. They love the white and the black, that opposing force, the fertile and the, all of the explanation of the yin and the yang. But the yin and the yang is created to create the victim, victimizer, polarity, dual mindset that is keeping us locked in prison. So yes, this plane of existence, this realm, is a realm of duality, but it's not because nature is about duality. It's not about nature. Nature shows us all the time that it's not about duality. It is only because of our minds and the way we're thinking. And we're dancing the dance with the perpetrator that we see as a perpetrator. And ultimately the perpetrator, although yes, there are external perpetrators, for sure, but the perpetrator begins within our minds. It does. It begins with the prison of our minds, of us victimizing ourselves and holding us as victims. Now, I personally say no to this paradigm because it's a broken paradigm. It doesn't work. And I want you to know, because I'm saying this out loud, that I myself know that I am so much more than this. And when I know this, when I say no and I step out of the paradigm, and I know and I honor that I'm so much more than this, I am already choosing to run at a higher frequency. And I'm choosing to run at the frequency of freedom. Freedom to expand into the other frequencies that are laying dormant until I arrive and awaken them to explore. And I must say that all of us are doing that. All of us are allowing other frequencies to lay dormant because we're not allowing the paradigm to fall away. And we're not allowing ourselves to run at the frequency of freedom. So I'm going to ask you again. Are you ready to let this one go? Are you ready to give up the ego that perpetuates this paradigm between either and or? Are you willing to no longer look at them as the victimizer and no longer looking at yourself as the victim, but to rise up beyond that thought and that consciousness into higher frequencies where love and peace and freedom coexist, and where all of us can live in a cooperative partnership, creating communities within our minds and our spirits and our hearts, and even in our physical lives? If you say that you already have done this, I will ask you to look again, because this paradigm runs so deep within us, every one of us, because we were born into a very dense realm of the third dimensional reality. And we were born to a mother who plays the victim. and to a father who plays the victim, and to a system that plays the victimizer. And we were born straight into a vessel called a hospital. And we were born unto the arms of a doctor who is the doc. We were born straight into being a slave and being owned by a system. We were born under fluorescent lights. We were born to being hit and slapped until we cried. We were born being taken away from our mothers, and thus the first experience in our lives is bright lights after coming from a dark womb and being hit and hurt by a stranger danger, and being abandoned by our mothers, being yanked away from our mothers and our fathers, and being cared for by strangers who are doing things to us, prodding us and poking us and taking our blood and putting ointments in our eyes and doing all sorts of terrible things to us quite immediately. We are born into being a victim, and we are born seeing the world as a victimizer. We are moved directly into broken trust. And so this one runs incredibly deep. And when we live our lives as victims, traumatized and wounded, imprisoned and used, beaten up and beaten down, and we die, and we recycle, and we're reincarnated, because reincarnation is true. It does happen. It is the truth. Then we, without having healed ourselves prior to, in our last lives, then we're carrying all of the pain and suffering forward from life to life to life, still imprisoned, still born into abuse, still born into being a victim while others are victimizing us, still indoctrinated to our enslavement and brainwashed consistently. And as we have upgraded our intelligence level, as we've upgraded our spiritual understandings or understandings, as the universe has sent us lots of energy to awaken, they have deployed much technology and much harm against us to keep us in a downgraded, lower frequency mode, again victimizing us over and over and over again. And so this one runs through every fiber of our being. And I will tell you, my friends, that many people that say that they're truthing, they don't know what truthing is. When they say that they've healed themselves, they don't know how much their ego is running the show. When people say that they've got that one handled and covered, I often find that they're the ones that don't have it handled and covered. You'll say to me, but Raven, have you left the victimizer mode? Have you stepped out of that paradigm? And I'll say to you honestly, no. I still see the parasites, and I still see myself having to deal with a lot of problems that would not exist if it weren't for them. I do still see many parts of myself being hurt by things in this world. But the difference is that I have on a lot of people is that I have a lot of insight into myself. And I'm constantly seeking for that moment when I can say to myself, what do you want to do with this, kiddo? Do you want to sit in a victim mode? And if I say, right now I just need to cry because I'm human. And I cry. And then I choose to stand up and say, that's over now. And I move forward. Are there still places inside of me that might be wounded? Oh, I'm not going to kid you at all. It's an onion layer. And I have worked very consistently on myself since I was at least 12 years old. To be very honest, I have. And the reality is, I'm still working on myself in those base places that were wounded and victimized, to remind myself that I am lovable and I am worthy and I'm a wonderful person. And whether the world reflects that truth or not, it's up to me to own that truth, and not today and forgetting tomorrow, but remembering every day. And I fall off that wagon. I judged myself for being 58 and gaining some weight. Even though I know that it's my thyroid, I still find myself lacking. Therefore, I'm victimizing myself. I'm being a victimizer. When love would just say, what does it matter that you're not as pretty as you used to be? What does it matter if you have more weight on you? You're still the same more wonderful person. In fact, you're much more wonderful because you're living through so many various different things and growing and expanding and still loving people and still wanting to help. Each one of us needs to be kinder to ourselves at all times. And each one of us needs to be much kinder to one another. We need to learn how to talk and communicate, which will be another How Do We Rise? And we need to listen very well. And we need to always be in a state of healthy stroking, partnering up, solving problems together while smiling. So, my friends, are you ready? Are you ready to take my hand? Are you ready to join your heart with my heart? Are you ready to have your soul step forward, guiding the way into cooperative partnership and into understanding how powerful you are, and that you do not need any of this paradigm of duality and polarity anymore? It really isn't about night and day, is it? It's about rhythm and movement. It's about spectrum. It's so much more than this or that. And it does take critical thinking, insight, and being able to awaken our minds to looking at and seeing all of it. So, when you're ready, and if you are, please definitely do comment in the comment box below. And I close today's podcast with gratitude and thankfulness for your listening. Have a great day. This is Raven White Dove, signing out while rising in love. If you like what you hear, please be sure to like this video. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. Subscribe to my channel and go ahead and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. See in the description how you can support my channel to grow, bringing you the best content that I can. Thank you so much for visiting and for your support. This is Raven White Dove, signing out while rising in love.